So any data warehouse, whatever we talk about, our data warehouse is nothing but the database where the data is being stored in the form of tables. So the data which are stored in the tables is used for reporting, and the kind of tables what you have in the data warehouse is a dimension of the fact tables. Dimension of the fact tables which you are going to use it. Dimension and the fact tables which you are going to use it in the real time. So now, since you already have a good background about the data warehouse, and I'll give you the clear picture and what kind of source system you are going to extract the data from and how the data warehouse is going to be built. So let's take the simple example through the diagram and then do it. So you have you understand what is an OLTP system, what is an OLAP system and all that, right? So OLTP system is nothing but the online transaction processing system. Online transaction processing system. So which you're going to use this online transaction processing system, OLTP. And here where you'll have a frequent transactions will be happening on the system, something like a insert, update, delete operations. Frequently the insert, update, DML operations will be performing on the system. So OLTP is going to be our source system to extract the data and then load the data into the OLAP system, OLAP or the data warehouse. So OLAP is called as an online analytical processing system, online analytical processing system. So you're going to extract the data, distributed data from different OLTP systems, and then you're going to load the data into warehouse. So to represent the data, data flow from the OLTP system, let's take a simple example and then understand. I assume that you have a city bank which has the operations into various regions, something like they have operations into Europe, they have operations into a bank, they have operations into America, in all the continents almost they have the operations. But when they are doing a business, the way they do the business in America is different, the way they do the business in India is different and all those things. So it will be the different systems or the different OLTP system being implemented. Assume that you have a different OLTP systems called as OLTP1 and OLTP2 and OLTP3. You have a different OLTP systems where the data is being distributed across. So now the idea of the data warehouse is that you are going to extract the data from different OLTP applications and then load the data into data warehouse where the data will be used for reporting. So the process of integrating the data from your OLTP applications, and loading the data into the data warehouse, or the process of integrating the data from OLTP applications or the OLTP databases is called as an ETL process. So ETL stands for extract, transform and load. So you are going to extract the data, transform and load the data. So you're going to extract the data, transform the data and then load the data into the data warehouse. So how the extraction will be done and how the transformation will be done and how the loading will be done, that is being completely handled by the ETL tools. So all your ETL tools are compatible in extracting the data from all your relational sources or from the legacy systems like mainframes, flat files and all those things. So in the data warehouse, the data warehouse will have the historical data. Historical data will be present, and whereas your OLTP system will not have the historical data, OLTP system will not have the historical data which is being present in the which will be there. And once you load the data into the data warehouse, it is going to be analyzed, and then the it's used for a reporting, and then the reports will be generated by the different OLAP tools. The process of generating the reports, is called as a BI process. BI stands for a business intelligence process. So you have a lot of reporting tools which are available in the market, so called as a OBIEE, OBIEE, Business Objects, Cognos. These are all the different reporting tools which will be used to generate the reports from the data warehouse. So now you already learned this process, like how to generate the reports from the data warehouse and then represent that in the OBIEE. I hope you learned OBIEE 11G. Okay, so 11G is a new version, and which is used for reporting and all. So the 11G is the one which used to generate the reports just like that. Now the other part of the story is that, so the data warehouse, any data warehousing project will consist of two responsibilities or two roles. So one is the ETL role. One is the ETL role or the ETL developer. Another is a BI developer. So what the ETL developer does, job of an ETL developer is to load the data into all your warehouse tables like dimension tables, fact tables, and all those things. And the BI developer, job of a BI developer is to generate the reports from the data warehouse. So the process of extracting the data, loading data, and then generating a report, this complete process is called as a data warehousing lifecycle. So the data warehousing lifecycle will consist of ETL role as well as a BI role. So when you walk into the projects, responsibilities will be divided. So few people will be working on the BI process, and few people will be working on the ETL process. So when you know the end-to-end, so since you know the BI, since you know the ETL, so if you completely, you can actually you can become a resource who can work as a complete end-to-end life cycle, right from designing of the ETL programs, and then designing the metadata, and then the reports in the BI. Designing the metadata and reports in the BI. So this will make your the chances of getting a job very easy when you learn both the ETL and the BI process. Since you already done one,
That's why I learned also that people were saying if I do Informatica and then I know how to do OBIEE also, that'll increase your chance of getting a job.
Yes. So now we will talk about how the ETL role and what are the different kinds of ETL tools are available, and which version of Informatica PowerCenter that we are going to talk about, and all those things we will discuss. So to proceed with it, there are a lot of ETL tools which are available in the market. One being the Informatica PowerCenter. Informatica PowerCenter, now currently we have a 9.5.1 is there in the market, and we also have the other tools like like Data Stage, which is from IBM, and you have Ab Initio, which is from Ab Initio Corporation. We have some other tools like OWB, Oracle Warehouse Builder, ODI, Oracle Data Integrator, which is from the Oracle Corporation. So these are all the different ETL tools which are available in the market. Now, among these tools, Informatica PowerCenter has a major market share among all the ETL tools. So we are going to understand, when we step into the Informatica, we are going to understand how the Informatica 9.1 or how the Informatica 9.x is different from the earlier versions, and what are the responsibilities of a PowerCenter developer. What are the responsibilities of PowerCenter developers, and what kind of programs will be created, and what PowerCenter developer responsibilities, and how we are going to do all these things will be predominantly discussed in the Informatica course. So when we go with it, so first we are going to understand about the architecture of Informatica, and then we will go with the architecture of Informatica, and we will use it. So Informatica is a client-server architecture. Informatica is a client-server architecture. That means, so as a developer, you will be having a powercenter client in your machine, and you're going to interact with a server which is being installed in the client network, somewhere in the client network. So it is a client-server architecture. Now, predominantly, we are going to discuss about the powercenter clients. So the powercenter has a 4 client tools. PowerCenter has a 4 client tools, so called as a PowerCenter designer, and you have the workflow manager, and you have the workflow monitor, and the next one is about the repository manager. These are all the 4 client tools which will be there in the PowerCenter. And all these 4 client tools are used to develop the ETL programs to extract the data and then load it into the warehouse. Now you have the Informatica server. Informatica server, you're going to communicate with the server based upon the client-server architecture. And how does your server communicates with the, how does your Informatica clients will communicate with the server? If both are installed on the same LAN, same local area network, it uses the TCP protocol. It uses the TCP, and if both are installed in the different network, then it will use the IP, Internet Protocol, to communicate with this. So your PowerCenter client tools will use a TCP IP protocol to communicate with the server. So these are all the 4 client tools which we are going to use it. And what are the differences between the Informatica, what are the enhancements that have been added in the Informatica 9.x? During the course, we are going to discuss how it is being used. And now the server is not an independent, Informatica server is something that which is not an independent tool to work with. So it has to be integrated with a database. A database can be a relational database which can be an Oracle or a Sybase or this thing. So this is called as a repository database. So what is the use of repository database? So Informatica, whenever it is, let's say you just talk about your Informatica, let's take a similar example. Whenever you develop a Java program, or whenever you develop a PLSQL program, all those programs, what will happen, Java programs will get saved into your hard disk. But in case of Informatica, Informatica will store all its related metadata into the database is called, which will consist of a predefined set of metadata tables. So that your repository database will consist of metadata tables. Around 7-10 metadata tables will be created during the installation. Metadata tables, and these tables will store all the related programs, whatever you create using the PowerCenter client tools. All the metadata will get saved onto these metadata tables. So this repository database, when you are choosing it, this repository database can be an Oracle database, or it can be an SQL Server database, or it can be a DB2 or a Sybase database. So you can choose any database as your Oracle, and you have different other things like SQL Server database and the Sybase. You can choose any database. So without the database, Informatica will not work. So it is just as good as creating a repository before installing your OBIE. So you do that repository creation, right, in the 11G. So it creates some metadata tables and all. So it's just the same process is being followed in Informatica also. So when you are installing the Informatica, it will create some repository tables and the domain tables in the schema, and all those tables will be used to store your metadata information about your programs. So now Informatica is not a standalone product, just like your OBIE. OBIE, you can't work with it unless you install the database before installing the OBIE, right? So it's just the same way. Before installing your Informatica, you need to install the Oracle database and create the schema, and in that schema it will create all these metadata tables. Okay, so this will save. I mean, this is a place that where your Informatica programs will be stored. Now, how does a server will save all these programs? How does a server will save all these programs to the repository database? So the server will consist of two kinds of main services. These services are called as core services, which called as, these services are called as repository service and the integration service. So how you're going to use them? Okay, let me just 1 second. So it consists of two services mainly called as repository service and the integration service. So the repository service is something that which will receive the request from the client. So whenever you create a program, so repository service will receive the request from the client tools, and then it will save the repository data on whatever the data that you are trying to store. Repository service will help you to save the programs to the repository database. Repository service will help you to store all the programs to the repository database. So whatever the programs that you create, it will help you to create the. So here in the Informatica, the programs are called as mappings, sessions, workflows. All these are all called as programs. We call them as Informatica objects. Sessions, and then the workflows. These are all the things that which you store, you create by using all these tools. Also the metadata will get stored, and repository service will help you to store those programs into the repository database. Now, there is another service. You're just creating a program, and now I have a source database. I have a source OLTP system, which is a mainframes. Assume that which is a mainframes, and you have to move the mainframes data into the target called as an Oracle warehouse. Just assume that you have to move that data to the Oracle warehouse. So Oracle is your database where you have to move the data from mainframe system to this. So which service will help you to move the data from source to the target? That is your integration service. There is one more service is called as an integration service. What the integration service does is integration service with the help of repository service. Integration service with the help of repository service, it will understand your program instructions. Which means from which table to which table it has to move the data. Assume that in the mainframes DB2 database, you have a table called as A, and you have a table called as B in your Oracle database, and you have created a program to move the data from table A to table B, and that program is being stored, and that program name is called as M1. Assume that there is an M1 program which is being stored in the repository database. So your integration service will go and read the instructions what you have kept in the M1 program, and then it will understand that it has to move the data from table A to table B. So your integration service will read the instructions with the help of a repository service, and it will extract the data from the mainframes. And within the server, it will transform the data and then load the data into your warehouse. So extraction of data is nothing but reading of the data. So your integration service will fire a select statement to read the data, and it will transform the data within the memory. So transformation will be done on the Informatica memory, and then it will load the data into Oracle database. So loading of the data is nothing but the inserting of the data. Inserting of the data into the target system. So the ETL process is completely handled by the integration service by understanding your instructions. So your Informatica is compatible in moving the data from mainframes, Salesforce.com, SAP, anything. You can move the data from any kind of a legacy system to any kind of a database. It is compatible in moving. So it has a compatibility with all the systems what you have in the market now. So predominantly how you are going to use it. So whenever you install the powercenter client, it looks something like this. So I have all the designer and everything is open in here. So you have a client and you have a powercenter client which you have. PowerCenter Designer, Repository Manager, Workflow Manager, and Workflow Monitor. These are all the different client tools you're going to use. And using the designer, you're going to prepare the mappings. So how the mappings will appear? So the mappings will appear something like this. Suppose, let's say, you're extracting the data from department table and then loading the data. Assume that the department table is available in the mainframes, and then you have to load the data into department max salary, which is available in the Oracle. So you're extracting the data and then migrating, and in between you're going to transform the data. That is called as a transformation. So when you look at the simple example, what we are seeing, so the way you create the instructions, that is called as a mapping. So this is called as a mapping, where you will define the instructions, and this is going to be executed by the integration service. So how you are going to execute the programs? With the help of a workflow manager. So workflow manager will contain the different kinds of programs like sessions, workflows, and everything. And using the workflows and sessions, you'll execute the programs. And in order to determine whether the workflow is succeeded or not, all those things, you're going to monitor it from the workflow monitor tool. Workflow monitor tool, where the workflow monitor will help you to read the data. Verify that how many records are being loaded. This is the workflow monitor. So here you are going to verify how many records are being loaded, how many are being rejected, whether the workflow is succeeded or not, whether it is failed or not, all those things. Whether it is failed, all those things you can verify from this. So if you look at any workflow, you can verify the reason why it is failed, how many records it has extracted, all those things you can verify it from the workflow monitor. So workflow monitor basically will give you the status about your jobs, whether they are running or not, at the proper time they are being invoked or not, what is the error, and for a troubleshooting, all those things, a workflow monitor plays a major role. So, and using your designer, you'll create the programs, and using your workflow manager, you'll execute the programs, and from the workflow monitor, you'll verify the status. You'll verify the status of your programs. All those things will be done. So now, to understand the other part, that is about the repository manager. So in the repository manager, what you do is that, like, you will have different environments in the real-time project, right? So in the real-time project, so dev environment, UAT, production, and all those things. So you're going to migrate the data from one repository to other repository. Just say I assume that InfoRep is my dev repository and InfoUTF-8 is my UAT repository. In order to migrate the programs from one repository to other repository, I will use the repository manager, and using the repository manager, I will migrate the programs from one repository to the other repository. It's just like as good as migration of your reports from one environment to the other environment, or deploying a hot PD from dev environment to the UAT environment. It's just the same thing. Like whatever the programs that you create here, mappings, workflows, sessions, everything, once you test, you're going to move all the things from this repository to the next repository, right? So that is how you're going to do it. Okay. So that is the use of these PowerCenter client tools and the server. So generally the server will be installed somewhere in your client machine, maybe in the Unix or the Windows, and based upon the configuration. As a developer, we'll be having only the PowerCenter client. We'll be having only the PowerCenter clients installed in our system to access the server and then create the programs. So this is what the scenario is going to be in the real time, right? So that's how you manage the PowerCenter developer client tools and PowerCenter developer responsibilities, all those things. That is just an outline what I have presented in the demo, and we will actually go in deep in understand the architecture, how can we actually configure all these repositories, and how can we actually create this repository database before installing Informatica. All these things will be discussed in detailed way in the course. Okay.
Okay.